I'm Marie Vigouroux.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And this is Rude Eats, a delicious podcast where we sink our teeth into every episode of the show Hannibal.
I want Will Graham, I really do. And I think that we could have some fun. Then you can do anything you like. I might even go and help you catch the shrike. I want Will Graham, I want that man. For every meal and on demand. His mind shines and his body's cut. I know that he works for the FBI, but what other man has pure empathy and the ability to see my mind? Jack, what other thing have I ever asked you for? Besides, never looking into my pantry? And I won't get that either. Damn. I want Will Graham, I want him so. And he really doesn't need to know what's in my meals or on my mind. I just want Will Graham to be mine. I want him and I want him now. I said before, I don't care how. I'll give him tests, he'll draw a clock. And then his dark desires I will unlock. We'll be together, Will and me. We'll throw some grand dinner parties. We'll cut the flesh, we'll cook the meat. He'll eat the food just like me. Give me goddamn Will Graham.
How are we doing today, Jeremy?
We're doing good. How are you doing, is what I want to know after this episode.
It was a lot. It was a lot. It's interesting because I kind of I watched this episode for fun, without taking notes, but we're only recording now, but I watched it I think almost 2 weeks ago at this point. Mm-hmm. So I've had time to really digest it and think about it, which is a little different from the previous episodes that we usually record within a week or so. So I don't know if it's going to change my approach to it, but I've definitely had time to sit with this episode more than usual.
Yeah, it's an episode you need to sit with. I think for the first time we're starting to see some truths about Hannibal that are mm-hmm. difficult for us to accept because he's so goddamn charming.
Yeah.
Let's clean up some admin real quick. I guess first off, this is probably the second or third episode we've recorded since the episode has been published, and I just want to say thank you to everybody that are sharing the episode. Spotify has a new commenting system, and it's great. People are just talking about the show on the episodes. It's so cool. Thank you everybody for doing that. I posted about the show on Reddit, and the thread did not get deleted somehow. I can't believe that. People were really positive about it, and I think we gained a couple of listeners. If you're on Reddit, go to the Hannibal sub and go find my thread, and then give it the upvote, I guess. I don't know how you do anything on Reddit. But thank you for everybody.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. I don't like Reddit that much, to be honest with you. Although even though it's the source of the world's information nowadays. But thank you
seriously.
For everybody who's been interacting with us over there. It's very nice.
Yeah. We should also say a huge thank you actually to people who are listening on YouTube and who are also leaving comments, because obviously the more people interact with our YouTube videos, the more the YouTube channel is gaining, I guess, steam in the algorithm or whatever.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to everybody watching and commenting on the episodes. I really didn't know that people would get so into it, but they do, and I love it. Thank you so much for that.
And finally, I want to give some props to our friend Mary here for going and doing a lot of work and getting the first, at the time of this recording, the first 2 episodes transcribed. So you can see the transcriptions on the episode's website. If you click on if you go to rudeeats.cool and click on an episode, the YouTube will automatically show you the transcripts. Apple Podcast has their own transcripts. Spotify does not support it yet, so you can't see it there. But in the show notes, there's also a link to our link tree, and there you will find a Google Doc or Google folder that has PDFs, transcripts of each and every episode. And I just want to give Mary all of the credit in the world for doing all of that work, because transcribing it's thankless and it's painful and it takes a very long time. So here I am to try to thank you to make it a little less thankless.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the thank you. It's awesome. This is something that's always been important to me. Like I think with Carrying Wayward, there was just so many episodes that it seemed like a mountain that I couldn't get through by myself. But seeing as here we have like fewer episodes and also like they're coming out every second week, like I feel more confident in being like, okay, like I can tackle this. And if I tackle it from the beginning, then that's something we can do. So my personal goal is to make sure that there's a transcript that comes out with every episode at this point. We'll see if I can keep to that, but that's the goal anyway.
Yeah, that's our goal. And if not on the day of, then maybe shortly afterwards. Just that's going to depend on schedules. Like we're not even like this is not a monetized podcast by any means. So that we're doing this out of the love and out of the fun. So if we're a little late on stuff, please don't get mad at us. We're doing our best. All of that said, we're going to cover Rude Eats Season 1, Episode 6, Entree, today. Jack and Alana are contacted by a former colleague, Dr. Chilton, who believes he has the Chesapeake Ripper in custody, but then one of his patients commits a murder that matches the Ripper's profile. The team determines that the Ripper was a surgeon and is still at large when young Miriam Lass becomes the next victim. By opening up to Hannibal, Jack copes with the loss of his young protege and with the prospect of losing his wife. That is the most terribly written summation of an episode I have read in quite some time. That is just all over the place in terms of sequencing and everything. This aired on May 2nd, 2013, was written by Kai Yu Wu and directed by Michael Reimer. Entree. It's time for the full meal, right? That's what entree means.
No. Well, Jeremy, I was just about to say that there are going to be some cultural differences here because entree in America, which is the main dish, is different from entree in Europe, which is a starter. Like, it really messed with my head the first time that I was in the States and people, what do you want as your entree? And I was like, oh, I already gave you, my entree. And they're like, oh no, honey, bless your heart. What do you want for your main? And I was like, oh my God.
Don't you dare bless my heart. I know what that means.
I know. I was like,
I can sense the condescension of that.
Right. Like 13-year-old me was like, I don't get what this is, what's happening, but whatever. Sure. But here, obviously, like we're dealing with the American meaning, because we are literally getting to the meat of this season, episode 6 out of 13, right? We're like smack in the middle. We see also a lot of things coming to light in this episode. There's many italicized oh moments, right? And so I'd like for us to kind of explore the theme of exposure or exposing, right? Which comes from Latin word ex, meaning forth or from, and ponere, meaning to put or to place. So literally to put forth. And this is such an illuminating episode that definitely puts forth a lot of stuff.
So I guess this isn't in the notes, so I'm going to spring this on you. But
sure.
The first thing that I want to say that this episode puts forth is that this is just a wild adaptation of the movie Silence of the Lambs without actually having any of the stuff from Silence of the Lambs.
What?
I won't go into all of the details, but like, as I guess let me say, I won't do that as we progress through the episode because it would get kind of tiring if I was just like, oh yeah, this is the thing that for a movie that you have not seen. But I do want to say, like, overall, there's so many nods, there's so many direct references, there's so many lifted lines from both the movie and the book that it's almost like, because they couldn't get the rights to Silence of the Lambs, which is, we've talked about that before, which is why, like, Clarice Starling never shows up in this series.
Right.
But, like, you might imagine a young FBI agent who's working for Jack while she's still taking, in classes at the FBI, and it gets into a little trouble. That's something that you might recognize from this episode and also the movie Silence of the Lambs. But there's a lot of this stuff. So I'm not gonna call it out explicitly. And listeners just know that every time it happened, me and my wife were like, right there. It's a Silence of the Lambs thing. Like we were very excited. This is also an opportunity I want to mention to people. We talked about this in the outtakes briefly, but because we're pretty far ahead on the podcast, we want to do specials for you guys. We want to do some special one-off episodes. My thought, I think that my initial thought, and I don't know if you agree with me, Mary, is to actually cover Silence of the Lambs since you've never seen it. And I don't want to cover a book for a podcast, so we definitely do the movie. Books are such a pain in the ass for podcasting purposes. But we would also like your opinion. So write in, comment on Spotify. You can write us at rudeeatspodcast@gmail.com or rude.eats.podcast@gmail.com. and tell us what you want us to cover. If you think there's something that's like not necessarily Hannibal universe related that would be good for us, or if you just want Silence of the Lambs, you can tell us that too.
I mean, I think Silence of the Lambs really makes sense, right? Like, it seems like a kind of an obvious first choice, which I love, right? Like, give the people what they want.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The other movies are interesting, but they're not as like culturally important as Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's definitely a good one to start with. And I think most people in the world besides you have seen it. So that's a good place to start.
I know, right? I'm so left behind on this. It's so funny.
With that said, are you ready to begin our play-by-play?
So I am ready, but I do have a question for you, because when I first watched the episode, I understood one thing, and when I rewatched it, I understood something different. And so I kind of wanted to clarify that, because I don't know which one is right. I just want to clarify something about Dr. Gideon. Did he ever work on the Chesapeake Ripper case? Or is he somebody who was unrelated to law enforcement? Because it wasn't quite clear to me.
So Dr. Gideon is just a killer. So he never worked on the Chesapeake Ripper case for whatever reason. And this is one of those things that where like some of the seams are coming a little visible if you know kind of some of the lore, but like there's really no, because he just killed his wife in like a kind of a crazy way. Like that's the only thing that we know about him. But for some reason, like he's, heavily requested by psychiatric people as to, get access to his brain or whatever. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense with what they show us about him in the show. But like if you put, let's say, I don't know, some other serial killer that likes to eat human flesh in this place, maybe that makes a lot more sense. You know what I'm saying? So but to answer your question, no, he did not work on the case. He's, as far as we know, he's just a killer. And now he is killed again. So.
Okay. Yeah, that makes that clarifies that, because the first time, for some reason, I had a feeling, I was like, oh, he used to work. I don't know where I got that idea, but like, I was like, oh, he used to work on that case with Jack or something. Well, I think he consulted or whatever.
Because I was excited for you to meet Dr. Chilton. So when we were chatting about this, and I think when I asked you about Dr. Chilton, you thought it was Dr. Gideon.
Yes, that too. I get them mixed up.
Yeah, maybe just having those. Hey, look, I'm getting roasted about Will and Jack, so don't.
Yes, you are. I'm so sorry.
Feel no problems. But I think that could be the case, because Chilton definitely helped them on the case, but previous. So that could be where you picked it up from and just got it crisscrossed.
Right. Maybe. Very possible. Okay, so now I'm ready. Thank you so much for answering my question.
So we're going to start a close-up of a man's face. This is Dr. Gideon, played by the wonderful Eddie Izzard. I love her. I've been watching her stand-up stuff for forever. That routine that she has with planting a flag is just killer. And her acting work is great. Brian Fuller went on to do they were trying to get the Munsters rebooted. And she was in the Munsters, and it didn't go anywhere but like a failed pilot, but it was really good. So he's on the ground, refusing to get up. And we see a group of orderlies come in to check his pulse. He's got blood coming out of his mouth, I believe. And they get him up on a gurney and start taking him to a nursing station, who begins to administer aid. We see his hands moving back and forth, and then he gets up. And that's when we get our cut to the intro. No, it's not quite intro time yet. It just cuts to Jack and Will arriving there at the Baltimore Correctional Center.
And the intro comes in like much later.
Yeah,
it's like a long open, right? And that's actually interesting, because it feels like the intro comes in later and later. I don't know if it's just an impression, but like they're taking more time to like introduce the stories, which I love personally. I kind of miss those long like exposition style yeah, I miss exposition, right? Like
Just
we
straight
don't
up
have a lot of that
exposition.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I if you ever watch Evil, they mess around with the title card and intros a lot. Like we watched an episode, and I think the title card hit at like 40 minutes out of a 45-minute episode.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, what?
Exactly. Hold on, that's not right either.
Did we just start? Like, you have that confused look of, wait a minute, did an episode start? We didn't notice, or
Yeah.
Will is worried about going into correctional facilities like these, afraid that they won't let him out.
Yeah, and Jack said, then he voices that, right? And Jack is like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you." And Will says, "Not today." And again, like this is another like real, like this gives me the bad feeling.
It should.
Oh no.
Within just a few seconds of meeting Dr. Chilton, we sort of hate him, and we realize that like the kind of cool, flashy sports car we saw outside is probably his. He's a very dapper dresser. You could tell he's like trying to intimidate Will with his credentials, looking down at Will for being a teacher. Like he's like, "Oh, good, you're a teacher." He's very condescending, and like you can kind of just tell that he just thinks highly of himself. One of those like very like attention-starved, self-serving academic type stereotypes.
I was gonna say, I'm like, listen, I work in academia. I see these men, because they're often men. I see these men all the time, and it's just like it creates like a visceral reaction in my body. Like I cannot deal with them. And somebody were like, "I'm so excited, Dr. Chilton is there." I was like, no, like just full on demon face. Like I can't deal with this person. Something that I do love, though, is that Jack intervenes, right? Like, and he gives Will the credibility that Dr. Chilton is trying to deny him. So this moment really, again, like if we're thinking about exposure, like exposes the nature of Dr. Chilton, like immediately. And we do learn more later. But again, I was already like, asshole. Okay, get you.
They question why Gideon was allowed to be alone in a nursing station, just him and the nurse, and they, he says, 2 years of good behavior, right? Like that we started relaxing security because we didn't need it so much, which seems. I don't know. Like if you're going to put somebody behind a glass wall, like when is secure? Like when do you get, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it already seems like you should heighten that security and just keep it at a certain level.
Right. I have a note here, but again, like the clarification that you gave me just doesn't have, like, means that this is meaningless, that this comment is meaningless. So we're just going to skip over it.
Well, I do actually. I was hoping you would bring this up.
Oh, really?
When I saw the note, just because you mentioned Mandy Patinkin, Gideon.
Yes.
I'll let you read your note. I'm sorry, I'm not going to literally read your note.
Oh, I mean, it's fine. I wasn't going to, so it would have been fair for you to do it. Right? Like, so it's just that, like, when I heard Gideon, I was like, oh my god, because I'm a criminal man's. Well, I mean,
you are a Criminal Man's fan.
I am Criminal Man's. I am a Criminal Minds fan.
You podcast about Dean Winchester. You're a Criminal Man's fan.
Yes, that's true. And Hannibal. Oh my god. Okay. So Gideon is the name of like Mandy Patinkin's like character in Criminal Minds, right? Like he was one of the founders of the BAU. And he ended up having to leave the job because of how much pain he had seen. And so it kind of made me wonder, again, when I wasn't too sure if like Dr. Gideon from here was like helpful to law enforcement or not. I was like, well, is it like a nod to Criminal Minds, or is this like pulled from the books directly? Like I'm not entirely sure.
So the character, I don't believe, is pulled from the books at all. And
okay.
The reason that I was interested in the naming thing is because Mandy Patinkin played in another Brian Fuller show called Dead Like Me. So I watched Criminal Minds. I watched the first few seasons, and then Mandy Patinkin left, and I was like, well, I don't want to watch this show anymore. Mandy's gone. But I didn't remember that he was named Gideon, and now I think it could be definitely like a reference to that character. So I think that's really interesting if true. Like I think that's just really cool. So
huge if true, right?
Huge if true. Jack wants to look at the crime scene, of course, and Chilton mentions that he knows that thing that Will does because they want the crime scene extremely fresh, and he wants to interview Will. He wants to like kind of psychiatrically like, I guess therapize is the word I'm looking for. Like he wants to like basically interrogate Will, and they're like, absolutely not. Like they shut him down, even though Will is, quote, quite the topic in psychiatric circles.
I know, right? And it's like, Jack again, like is like really in I was going to say in Jack's corner. I think it's contagious. Oh no. So Jack is really in Will's corner, right? So like, he's not here to be analyzed, but Chilton goes like with a smile, well, maybe he should be. And I just, again, like that moment, I was like, I recognize too much of that attitude for me to be okay with it. So anyway, and I just want to point out that there's like 2 stag sculptures behind Will in Chilton's office.
Is that the only stag sculptures you've seen in the show?
Probably not. No. There's other ones, but like but these ones stood out to me.
Okay. Well, I will. Been having a hard time not saying things or leading you directly to stuff, so I'll just good eye looking for their stag sculptures. I think that's a good thing that you should do more often.
Okay. All right. Noted.
They walk to They walk to the crime scene. I was going to say tea party. Like, what are we doing?
The tea party? I mean, you know.
They go to the crime scene. We learned that Chilton consulted on the Chesapeake Ripper case like years ago. And now he's convinced that Gideon is the Chesapeake Ripper. The reason that there hasn't been any Chesapeake Ripper killings in the last 2 years is because he's been, confined here. And then we finally get our first look at the crime scene where they enter the nurse's station, and we find this nurse who has literally been used as a pincushion for blunt objects. And this is... we have seen some pretty gruesome stuff on Hannibal, flayed flesh turned into wings. We've seen a woman literally mounted on antlers. We've seen some pretty horrifying things. This is brutal in a way I don't think any of that other stuff has been. Those other crimes have been like this. We always talk about Hannibal having like kind of almost beautiful imagery in its kills, and this feels very animalistic and brutal.
Well, yes, I so absolutely. And the second time I watched it, I was able to pay more attention to details, and I realized that the nurse isn't really propped up on any kind of table or surface, right? Like she is literally held up by the stuff that he impaled her with. And it's a lot, right? But it also feels like a Baroque painting in a way. Like, yeah, I don't know how else to say this, but like, I feel like I could see this in a museum. And so like that relationship between like aesthetic and ugliness and murder and death is just like something that feels so artistic to me that like I'm having like, of course I see the brutality, but I'm also like, but it's so pretty. And I don't know what that says about me, and that scares me.
Oh no, Mary,
yeah.
Oh no.
I know, right? And also like when I was taking my notes, I realized that it was really close to how like the Hobbs copycat, right? Wink, 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 had mounted the victim onto the stag antlers in the field.
Absolutely. And I think it makes a lot of sense with what you're talking about, like it looking like a Baroque painting, considering we're going to figure out where this came from later in the episode, right? Like we have a source for where these injuries are coming from. We finally get our intro, and then we come back to the episode, and now Will is in Gideon's place, and he's being wheeled into the nurse's station, and we see him remove the broken tongue of a fork from underneath his skin and use it as a lockpick. And then he frees himself, and he begins to attack the nurse. A lot of things are happening right here. Like, this is one of the most violent scenes I think we've seen, because very specifically it's aimed at a woman, but also like it's very much in the moment in a way that some of these other like reenactments have not been. But also there's a couple of funny things I just want to point out. He clips the handcuffs like back on each wrist, so he's just got little handcuff bracelets, and I just think that's cute. I think that's real cute. And he's also, and this isn't as funny, but like, why did you unbutton your top 3 buttons, my man? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, why are you showing us the chest during this scene? Because why are you trying to make this hot, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's this idea of just like covering Will Graham in blood, and for some reason it gets us all going, and we're like, oh yeah, more.
And this is disturbing. Like we see him literally poke her eyes out with his thumbs. We see her like crawling away as like this music kind of ramps up. This big percussive moment like kind of happens in the music, and as he grabs like a literal IV stand. And goes to stab her with it, and that's when he like wakes up, when we see Jack and Chilton walking in the distance. And as he comes into the real world, they have a brief conversation with Will, and then Jack starts to remember some stuff that happened a few years ago when he was actively working the Chesapeake Ripper case. And we are introduced to young Georgia Lass. Excuse me, Miriam Lass. I'm sorry. Another. The reason I'm getting that confused, so I mentioned Dead Like Me a little bit ago. The main character in that is named Georgia Lass. This is Miriam Lass, who was George's little sister, leading people to think that the two shows are related. But it's just, I'm sure it's just like a reference. Like, this is not the actual little sister that was blah, blah, blah.
I
blah.
love that.
But just a little bit of connection.
Yeah.
Also, the character that plays Georgia Lass is going to literally show up in the show in a little while. Like, the actor is going to show up.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So it's 2 years ago. Jack is rocking a goatee. Thanks for shaving that off. We don't like it. And here's Miriam, who is in the FBI Academy, still studying. She wrote Jack a letter because she wanted to be on his team as she entered the academy. He never responded. He says he never reads those. And he wants her to help with the Ripper. And she begins to kind of just automatically start profiling him and saying, like, he doesn't have the typical characteristics of a true sociopath, and starts listing out all these other things. And Jack is looking at her like in this appraising manner, but you can kind of tell he already knows this stuff. Like, they've already figured that out, or at least they've already presumed this stuff.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that I want to highlight here, just for what happens later, is that she says that, of course, he has no remorse, and so in that way, he does fit the profile of a sociopath. However, he's not going to be like a drifter, and he also doesn't have a history of trouble with the law, which is going to make him a lot harder to catch.
Yes. We should also mention that Miriam is played by Anna Klimsky, who I think made everybody cry in My Girl back in the 80s. So if you haven't seen My Girl and you need to cry, go see My Girl.
Her.
Yeah.
Oh, he can't see without his glasses.
Oh yeah, that'll get you every time. Yeah, she's been in a ton of stuff. Like, she's had a huge career, right? Like, obviously, but also My Girl.
Yeah.
He compliments her, saying that she has, law enforcement experience, a degree, a doctorate, but he wants her on his team. And then he kind of, like, I think subtly insults her. I think this is our conversations about Jack have been like this a lot, right? Where he keeps people at a distance and, like, kind of subtly manipulates them. Like, he gives her that compliment, and he's like, then he's also like, but I also need warm bodies. Like, kind of saying, like, you're just another warm body around here.
But this also feels like very, what is it called? Like that manosphere thing where, like, men are, like, giving women compliments that are actually backhanded. Yes. Yeah. That's what he's doing. I was like, I don't know what the fuck it's called. I don't care about it. But, like, that's what it feels like, right? Like, oh, that dress, something, you know what anyway, I'm not
so
even going to try
to.
to.
For being able to remember that. Like, that kind of bullshit. Like, awful.
But that's what it feels like, right? Like, this woman, because this woman is extremely accomplished, right? Like, think about it. She's got a degree in psychology, so that's 4 years of studies. She's got a doctorate, which is like anywhere from 2 to 4 years of studies. She's also a law enforcement officer. So, like, she is not like a fresh-eyed, like, 21-year-old little girl, right? Like, she is at least in her late 20s, extremely accomplished, and he's like, I just need warm bodies. Like, excuse me, Jack, but, like, this is probably, like, one of your most outstanding students. Anyway. We
get back to the present, and this time it's Will and Alana visiting Dr. Chilton in his office. He's complaining about the amount of mail that Gideon gets, saying that he feels like Gideon's secretary. Most of this mail is interview requests and some lonely hearts looking for love, even though he literally murdered his wife on Thanksgiving, as Alana points out. And again, he's just convinced that Gideon is the Ripper. And he's also condescending to Alana here, where he says, because Alana has some experience with Gideon. She interviewed him twice during the court procedures, and she, wrote not a paper, I don't think, but, like, wrote a report on it. And he's like, I read that, and your thoughts were helpful, more or less. And just and even Alana's like, well, I'm glad they could be helpful, and Will is like, more or less. It's just a really funny moment.
Will is like not having any of this, right? He's like, this guy is a jerk, and I don't want to. I don't care about him, right? And he also pushes back very, very strongly against the idea that Gideon is the Reaper. The Reaper. Oh my God. Words are hard today. Words are hard.
It's okay.
So he says that like murdering his wife was basically impulsive and that the Ripper is very methodical, very meticulous. And I am going to expose myself here and say that I did not put two and two together here. Like it took me like much longer than I care to admit to realize what was actually going on.
We learned that they're going to conduct separate interviews with Alana starting first. She walks to the cell that he's in. And I want to ring a bell for every Silence of the Lambs reference, but she sits down in front of him. He of course remembers her. He calls her Sublime, and we're going to start this longest scene where we're going to flip back and forth to where, and I love the way that this is constructed, just from a writing point of view, where Alana asks a question. And then Gideon answers it, and then Will picks up the thread, and they switch back and forth. Even though these conversations are happening at different moments, to the viewer, like it's happening, it feels like one conversation happening. And the big thing that they're asking about is like, why? Like, why are you admitting this so late? And there's some interesting things that we learned here of, hey, I don't like being called the Ripper. Like, it just feels very base, basically. And he didn't want to tell anybody until some other stuff happened, right? Until other things started happening. So he just basically had been holding this in the entire time. And I think Alana does like some very basic psychiatric probing, and she's like, would you prefer a Rorschach's test? And he's like, well, you should put a blood pressure gauge on my genitals. I'm like, what? I don't. I'm pretty sure that's a direct reference to the books, but also like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Alana, of course, points out that all of this brutalization to the nurse was done after the body was killed, after she was killed, not before. And he says, I do not have to convince you that I'm the Ripper. And Alana says, it seems you do. And Will says, it's what somebody needs to do. Which is, again, like, I don't. Yeah. What's your kind of vibe on Gideon right now? Like, do you think that he did this as to confess that he's the Ripper? Like, what was your vibe as you were watching this?
As I was watching this, I was very confused because I was like, he's not the Ripper, because Will said that he's not the Ripper, and I tend to trust how Will thinks about these things, especially when he's so certain about something. So I was like, okay, like I'll trust that. But I was like, but then how does he know so much about it? And maybe that's how I was like, well, he must have known about more details, right?
Yes, somehow, right? Like
somehow. It's the somehow that I don't quite know yet. We definitely get a really cool cut to Hannibal moment here, right? Like, and I can't believe I didn't get that at that moment. I was like, oh
no! It's what somebody needs. Cut to Hannibal. Yes, exactly. And it's literally Hannibal opening his office door to find Jack waiting for him. And Jack is obviously upset. And he says that, he can't talk to his wife, Bella. He says that Bella's fine, or whatever that means at this moment. And even if she was here, even if she wasn't on a business trip, he wouldn't be able to talk to her. And Hannibal's like, I can't talk to you either, homie. Like, it's confidentiality. And he's like, well, what about what you do with Will? He's like, well, I'm not Will's doctor. We just have conversation. He says, well, how would you describe this? And Hannibal says, desperate coping, which sometimes you can just...
I love how that makes you laugh.
It's just, I mean, because Jack doesn't even seem to like take that in, but it's such a devious insult. Like, it's something beyond negging even, like, right? Like, it's just like it's
just openly insulting, I guess, it's openly.
It's openly insulting, but it's presented as fact. So like, it's almost like your brain doesn't even process. Like, it's going to be 2 years down the line, and Jack's going to be like, what did he say to me?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing though, like, he's not wrong, right? It's like, well, it's true. It is desperate coping. Oops, I did something. There you go.
And of course, Jack is he's struggling to cope with his wife's illness. All he can think about is his wife dying. And he begins to like emotionally break here. Like, his voice breaks as he tells Hannibal, like, he can't stop thinking about it. Like, even to the point where he's thinking about where she's going to die. This is, I said I was not going to do this, but this is such a poignant moment in the book. Like he's referencing something that happens in the book that really powerfully affected me when I reread it. I wasn't expecting it, and like had to go talk to my therapist about it. I was like, just because of all of the stuff we talked about with the last cancer episode. Yeah. And it's brought up here in a great way, and it's just Lawrence Fishburne being Lawrence Fishburne, just being amazing.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne is really killing it here. Like it's such a great contrast to Hannibal, who is like completely devoid of emotion in this moment, and even to like what we had seen like Jack previously, like who always seems so in control, right? Like he's not in control in that moment, and it's really killing him. Like this is very, very different from what we know who Jack is.
Absolutely. And I think going back to our theme, right? Like we're exposing Jack's limited control over his emotions throughout this episode. Like that's going to be kind of his whole arc throughout this, is like just slowly but surely realizing like he isn't in near as much control as he thought he was. Exactly. Jack begins to remember Miriam again, almost at Hannibal's prompting, which is that this is a really subtle thing where Hannibal's like, I think he mentions something, but Jack begins to remember Miriam. And we see the previous victim of the Ripper, who looks exactly like the victim, like the nurse from the cold open, like exactly like. And Miriam begins to analyze the body, saying that the victim was kept alive during all of this, that organs were taken after. She believes it'd be some sort of medical doctor, maybe a surgeon, but says not a white man though, like somehow kind of exotic, and says that that's going to be how Jack can catch him. And Jack is like, "What do you mean? You think I'm going to catch him?" He's like, "Yeah, all of us cadets call you the Guru." And we haven't really seen this side. We obviously, like, Jack is the in charge of the BAU. He's got this team. He's recruited Will. He's got Alana. Like they're catching serial killers, but we haven't seen him as this like kind of mythical figure in the FBI, which is very much what he is.
Right. And I just want to come back to a very small moment before this happens, right? Because like Hannibal is kind of asking, like they're still talking and he goes like, you can't save her. She won't let you. The cancer won't let you. Who else couldn't you save? Right. It was that question. Like it was a tell me Will moment kind of thing. And so the first time that I watched this, like I was still really clueless as to what was going on, but I did remember that in the first few episodes, Hannibal asks Jack about like broken ponies as a way to kind of ask about like the people that he's lost. And I was like, why is he bringing that up again? Like what's going on? And then obviously like back then in the series, Jack was much more grounded, more solid, so he didn't answer. But here, like he's very, very vulnerable to Hannibal's manipulation. And that's when we get this flashback scene of Miriam and Jack analyzing the work of the Ripper.
Interesting.
I think so anyway.
Autumn had a question for you as we watched this.
Yes.
She was wondering, as watching this as a new viewer, if this reads as like between Jack and Miriam specifically, is this reading at all like sexual to you? And the reason, like I've mentioned before, that like Miriam is very much a stand-in for Clarice Starling, and it's not something that ever comes up in the movie. And here, like the vibes are just, I don't know. Like I never looked at it that way, but Autumn was curious as someone with fresh eyes if you got any of those vibes.
Well, I mean, I definitely saw like this like student teacher tropey vibe kind of thing. Like if that's your thing, like you can definitely see it. Like she's clearly got some hard eyes, like talking to him, like, and he definitely seems to thrive on the flattery. So sexual, I don't know, but definitely flirty. And the cut to Will in that moment is also really interesting, I find, because Will and Miriam are very, very different people. And one of the ways that they're different is the way that they approach Jack, right? Like Miriam seems to completely idolize him, whereas Will really doesn't. Miriam would do anything that he asks, and she does later to her great detriment, and Will would not. And it kind of made me wonder if Jack didn't specifically seek out Will for those reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting calling out the difference in the way that Will and Miriam approach Jack, because a lot of times Will just seems almost like exhausted with Jack, right? Of course, Will just seems exhausted by his life, to be honest with you.
Yes.
But most
Like
of the
poor
reasons
baby.
for that exhaustion are caused by Jack. So, but Miriam, I don't think Miriam would ever show that. Like just the brief glimpse that we get through her personality up to this point in the episode, like we see that idolization. Like she would literally do anything for him.
Yeah, exactly.
And as you mentioned, we cut to Will. We're in the morgue, and we're looking at the body of the nurse that was killed as they're trying to kind of analyze it. Of course, it's just the way that the Chesapeake Ripper's last victim was, and Jack very, very pointedly says, not the last victim. And again, this is a little bit of foreshadowing for some stuff that's going to happen in a later episode, but it's really, really good. Will, however, kind of describes this as plagiarism, which is really interesting.
Yeah, he says, like, I see the Ripper, but I don't feel the Ripper. Like, he's really concerned that if Gideon isn't the Ripper, then the real Ripper is actually going to make sure that everybody knows it, right? And we cut to...
Jack at home. And he gets a phone call from Miriam, apparently.
Right.
We hear her voice on the speaker. Jack, please, you got to help me. I was wrong. And we jump ahead to where Beverly is doing her again and agains, as she describes it. I love that because he's like, check it again, and she's like, I've already done my agains and my agains. Like she's already gone through all of the motion. There's some real hacky bullshit here with we can't find a trace of the phone line or whatever. And it's I just want to point it out because I did telecom work as a young man, and the doctor here is like, he could have tapped into the phone line and it would have bypassed all the stuff, and I'm like, damn, they got me. That's actually pretty accurate. Like you could totally do that.
Oh, wow. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, again, like I was trying not to think too much about the fact that these are like medical doctors doing like this tech stuff, because I was like, no, don't think about it. It's going to ruin it. So, but yeah.
Everybody knows that you can analyze fingerprints at an FBI level and also hack into telecom systems. Like, it's so silly.
Yeah, there you go. But I'm willing to forgive it.
One of our doctors, Z, I think for Zeller, questions Jack. Hey, did anybody else hear this? You were woken up in the middle of the night, and Jack is like, "Hey, you're gonna have to if you're gonna keep questioning me, like you're gonna need to leave before this room gets dangerous for you." And I think this is the second time in the episode we see him losing control. Like we're exposing exactly how much that he's lost control over his actions.
Yeah, there you go. I think that that's exactly what's happening, right? Like not only in his personal life, but it's starting to bleed out in his professional life as well.
And he says that he thinks that the Ripper recorded Miriam's death and is now calling and kind of taunting him with it, which is like super fucking awful if true. Like that's a horrible.
Awful if true, right? And it's so. I mean, like obviously, then Gideon's not the Ripper in that moment, right? Like that's how you realize that it can't possibly be him, or he would have had to have an accomplice on the outside.
Yes.
But Will makes the point that it might not have been a recording, as Jack thinks, because like he said earlier, they never found a body. I
know, it's spooky.
Right.
So again, like what the fuck happened to Miriam is the question. Like what is going on? I love this so much, especially because I know everything that happens to Miriam. Are
we going to get more detail?
Throughout this episode? Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right.
The short answer is yes. Like we're not going to be done with this plot line at the end of the episode. So.
Okay. All right. Great.
Zeller also begins to question, like, could this have been a dream or whatever. I love this transition from Jack, like, angrily kind of lashing out with him saying, I know when I'm awake, to Will in his classroom, hallucinating the stag walking through his door, clearly not understanding when he's awake or not. Just very good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love these cut twos, right? Like they are so good. These smash cuts are amazing, and I live for them. And also, like, I noticed that the soundtrack on this moment, like, it's clear that Will doesn't know that he's awake thing. Like, it's just so weird and amazing. Like, it's bizarre. Like, there's metal screeching sounds and, like, the violin, like, screeching. Like, it's just, it's so uncomfortable and unpleasant and yet so perfect.
Yeah. I knew some shit was going to get real with the soundtrack. I've always appreciated the soundtrack of Hannibal as being, like, having a lot of, like, ambient weird atonal kind of vibes to it, and also some just really beautiful tracks in there as well. When I ripped the soundtrack, I bought the soundtrack, which is surprisingly hard to get. Like I had to go like buy a used copy from Discogs. But
Oh, wow.
when I ripped it, there's like, I think for this episode actually, or maybe it was episode 7. There's a track for each episode, number 1. But number 2, one was just 40 minutes long. And I'm like, what? What did you do? Is this for the entire episode? So yeah, the soundtrack definitely gets very weird. And if you like this, you're going to really like things that keep happening.
I love that.
Walking behind the stag are Jack and Alana, and they have this ideal that they want to push the Ripper by enraging him. And Will is, I think, absolutely validly saying like, won't that just make him kill again? And quickly realizes that the way that they're going to push the Ripper is by getting into bed with Freddie Lowndes. And yeah, that's exactly what Jack is doing.
Well, so I'm kind of wondering here, like, is Jack really thinking clearly? Like, is this a choice that he would be making if his wife wasn't dying? Because it seems like he dislikes her very, very much, and yet he's willing to compromise his morals in order to catch this guy, right? Or to provoke something in this particular case. And well, I mean, first off, I think that exposes that Jack's morals like don't hold up very strongly, which is why I'm kind of like, is this a contextual thing, or does he just not care about getting into bed with Freddie Lowndes?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think because it's not just his wife dying, it's everything with Miriam Lass, right? That's one of his broken ponies. And I think if those two things weren't happening at the same time, I think if the Chesapeake Ripper had not been brought up so fresh immediately before Miriam Lass, like, you have to think that Jack views not being able to catch the Chesapeake Ripper as a failure, right? Like, it's been 2 years, the case has gone cold, and I'm sure the FBI doesn't catch every serial killer that they get, that they can track, right? Like, that's probably impossible. But at the same time, like, the audacity of that the Ripper had, like, you would want to think that you could be able to catch this guy, and you cannot. All of that stuff is playing into his desperation to try to prove A, Gideon is not the Ripper, and B, try to catch him again, right? Like, to use Gideon's thing to try to push the Ripper into doing something, to making a mistake somewhere. And using Freddie Lowndes is shitty, I think, for everybody, right? Obviously, it's shitty for Will. I think it's like, it's tempting Freddie to put herself in the line of fire almost, as we're going to see. And as we've already seen, like, Hannibal's already kind of had his eye on Freddie, right? We kind of thought she was about to be eaten in like episode 2. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, is Freddie Lowndes has Freddie Lowndes been eaten yet? No, not yet.
There's a Tumblr, because I go through the Merlin tag on Tumblr all the time, looking for like fan art and stuff. And there's just is there a season 6 yet? No, like, it happens every week. And I'm just like, these people are holding on. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right to question this, and I think that you're right in thinking that this is desperation from Jack. Again, just another sign that he's losing a little bit of control.
It kind of makes me think that, like, maybe, I don't know if this is this episode, or I actually, so far it seems like it's this show that's about, like, kind of exploring the set of circumstances that it would take for somebody to break and to do something really, really bad. Like pushing people to their limits kind of thing, and seeing where those limits are. And it sort of seems like here, oh no, what's this sigh?
No, please continue. This is such a sharp and well-observed sentence that you're making. I'm so sorry. I'm not sighing in exasperation, I promise you. I'm sighing in admiration and just, God, Mary, I'm so sorry to expose this show to you.
But yeah, it sort of feels like, and Hannibal loves to do that, right? He loves creating those circumstances for people to break people, right? And he's doing that very, very strongly with Jack. He started doing that with Will as well. Like, and we see in this episode that he starts with Chilton as well, which I like. Anyway, dumb baby boy. But I feel like Jack is in the process of breaking right now. Like,
yes, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, it's such a sharp observation that you should carry in your back pocket as we continue to watch the TV show Hannibal. Because Jesus Christ.
Oh no.
time to meet up with Freddie Lowndes. It's Jack, Will, Alana on one side of the table, Freddie by herself on the next. Will pointedly refuses to shake her hand. And Jack begins to do his normal manipulative stuff. Like he first like compliments her, and then like wonders, like at the same time saying like you do good work, and then saying, why did you end up in tabloid stories, or as she rephrases it, criminal justice journalism. And Jack begins to kind of bait this hook. So he offers her an exclusive on the Ripper if they help him, and it kind of like puts even more bait on the hook by saying, you know, all of these vaulted, you know, huge institutions would have to run your story under your byline, including the Holy New York Times. And she asked for an interview with Gideon, which they give her. Alana says that she can do that, and she specifically asked if Gideon is the Ripper, and everybody plays it coy and it's like, I don't know, maybe. And she's got to be wondering like why she's doing this, right? Like, but at the same time, I think Freddie is sharp enough to understand why she's doing this. And then there's a very funny conversation about like the list of chosen professions of psychopaths, which of course is like CEOs and lawyers. And Will's like, and one's journalist, and Freddie's like, the next one is law enforcement. Like they're getting real shitty with each other. But I really like Freddie's line here. Like, here we are, a bunch of psychopaths helping each other.
Well, and Will's not happy about this, right? Like, but she is right. Like, it's really interesting to me that like the Chesapeake Ripper, again, I'm putting that in, like, is pushing all of these people to be their worst selves, right? And again, cut to. I love this show so much. It's so good.
This scene, I worked so hard to put this scene in our music video. And if I ever do another Hannibal music video, I'm going to try to go back to it because it's such a long, lingering scene of Hannibal just looking at his tablet. Also, I love that he has a tablet in his hand for allow me to ruin all television for you. Apple doesn't let you, like, if you're a villain in a TV show or movie, they don't let you use an iOS device.
Oh, I know that. Yeah.
And yeah, so obviously this was before that. So like he's using an iPad, and I'm like, they wouldn't let Hannibal use an iPad now.
No, they wouldn't.
That dude would be rocking a Samsung. But yes, this scene, this cut to Hannibal reading Freddie Lowndes' blog, essentially talking about how Gideon is the Ripper for sure, and you could just tell he's seething, like underneath all of his poise and underneath all of his normal like just stoic outward view, he's just fucking seething.
Okay, this is when I got it. Like, it took this is when I got it. I gasped the loudest possible gasp. And I just, like, on my first watch, I think I just stared at the screen at this point, like, with my mouth open, like, just in shock for the rest of the episode. Like, my brain just stopped functioning. Like, there were no brain cells working, right? Apart from the ones that were taking in this episode. And, like, there were no coherent thoughts. Like, just... that only happened on the second watch, I promise you. Like, all of the coherent thoughts that I'm having are only coming from this second watch. So, coming back to our theme of exposure here for a second, like, Hannibal is now being exposed to the audience as the Chesapeake Ripper, or at least, like, it's very strongly implied, right? So we know that he's a cannibal. We know that he feeds human flesh to his dinner guests, but like he's so charming that it's almost like, well, no one's perfect, right? Like we're almost willing to overlook that fact. But then last week we got a flash of him hunting a person, and it was disturbing, but like, oh well, nobody wants to see like how the sausage gets made. But then like this episode really puts forth like Hannibal's work.
It's I think the first moment, I think it's interesting, right? I'm fascinated with your perspective on this because it's so unique, right? Like we finally found someone that doesn't know anything about Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, exactly.
And like going into this and like having them kind of hint at stuff, like we've seen him do killings. Like it's heavily implied that he's the one that did the copycat killing because he's so proud of himself when he sees Will teaching it in his classroom, like he has like that subdued smile. We've seen what he did with Oh Christ, I can't remember anybody's name today. What are words? How do words work today on podcasts? Abigail.
I know.
We've seen like him hiding
Yes.
literal murders from everybody with Abigail. We've seen him like literally drug Abigail. We know for a fact it's been like he's been feeding human flesh to people. Like we know that. Like we see that. But this is just a confirmation that like whatever Jack has been chasing, he's also been next to this entire time. And it's such a frightening thing. It's so scary. And I think that's one of the reasons that Hannibal Lecter, especially as the show, is so good. Like it gives us that, because there's not a lot of this in the book, right? Like in the books, it's like a lot of the time Hannibal Lecter is in jail. Like we spend a lot of time doing that. It's the show that really gives us this like really, really bare glimpse into like how he works and the ramifications of that. And we're just beginning to see that with him like literally unraveling Jack in this episode.
Well, I mean, I think it's, you know, so like horror usually tends to like play on our fears, right? So like, depending on the type of horror that you're presenting, like you're also touching upon different types of like very visceral fears. And I think here it's like this idea of like the nice neighbor that you would never guess is actually like a really horrible person is a really horrible person. And you have been fooled, even if you are somebody who is, you know, like Jack Crawford, like Will Graham, like Alana Bloom, like Dr. Chilton, like all of those people who are literally trained to recognize people with traits similar to Hannibal's are not able to see him. And I think that's the play here. Like that's the part that's supposed to scare you. It's that even your neighbors can be serial killers and you would never know.
God, and if you think it's bad now, just wait.
Oh no.
Jack goes to see Gideon. And tells Gideon that he is not the Ripper. Gideon insists that he is, and Jack questions like, "Why didn't you take any trophies or display them like you did other killings?" And Gideon says like, "Hey, I'm not here to talk about the killing of my family. I want to talk to you about Miriam Lass, and he says I didn't mean to kill her, which is very ominous."
And Jack also asks like why he didn't put her on display, and Gideon says like, "What makes you think I didn't?" And those words sent chills down my spine.
Very scary. And just then Jack gets a phone call from home, and he answers, obviously expecting his wife, but instead it's Miriam's voice again. I was so wrong. I don't want to die like this. So Will and the crew but everyone goes to Jack's bedroom. And again, I think this plays into our theme of exposure again. So this is not an area, this is a very personal area for your work associates to be. Like, nope, none of my work associates have seen my bedroom, right? Like, this doesn't, and so Jack is literally being exposed. And if we make the assumption that Hannibal is the Chesapeake River, it's Hannibal forcing Jack to expose himself to his coworkers, which is even worse, like exposing that vulnerability. Even though his room is fine, it looks like a hotel room because it's TV, but at the same time, it's a very personal area.
It's very intimate.
Exactly.
Actually, it's
intimate
more than
is the word
personal.
I was trying to
at
look
that
for.
point.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No. It's like you are literally letting these people into like your intimate life, right? And so like they would be well within their right to search the bedroom entirely, which, I mean, not great.
Not good.
No.
Even worse, they find evidence of Miriam Lass in the bedroom. A hair on the pillow, and fingerprints on the phone, which they quickly match to Miriam. All very, very terrifying.
And so, okay, so this means that basically her body, or at least parts of it, have been preserved from like 2 years ago, right? So, and like the whole "what makes you think I didn't put her on display" thing is kind of, I'm so sorry to say this, but like it makes me think of like the especially supercilious pig that Hannibal fed Jack and Bella in the last episode.
I did not put that together, and
oh, yeah, there you go.
That's rough, Mary.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, but like again, like that's like I don't know how bad Hannibal really is. Basically, is kind of like my issue here. Like, is he is he that bad or is he not? Because I kind of think that he might be.
I think by the end of the episode we realize just how bad he is.
Yeah.
Although everything in Hannibal can always get worse at any given time. So just
Oh man.
Will begins to wonder if Jack knew that he was sending Miriam last to the Ripper, and if it could be somebody that knew he was close to Miriam, and whether or not he feels responsible for Miriam's death. And I think Jack here even says like, we don't know that she's dead or something. Like he even points out like we haven't recovered a body or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
Yeah, like I wonder who it could possibly be that believes he was close to Miriam and knows that he feels responsibility for her death. Like, oh man, who could that be?
And we have another flashback scene. We're going back to Jack's office from 2 years ago. And this time, Miriam has come into his office, having presented a report about a proposed plan that she wants to investigate. And this time it's a very different vibe. Instead of complimenting her, he's kind of dismissive of her, saying that she should go to class, saying like doesn't even acknowledge that she left the report. She has to kind of wheedle that out of him. And just basically just like, is kind of tossing her aside, saying like, you need to focus on your stuff. I don't have a use for you right now. But as she turns to leave, then he says, oh, I did read the report, and what you're proposing is illegal and could break patient-doctor confidentiality. But if you do it, like, it's okay. but it's not good if the guru does it. Like, but as an FBI trainee, you could do it. And she says, oh, so I could ask for forgiveness as opposed to permission. And he says, exactly. And she says, oh, I hope you forgive me for skipping class today. And this is such a fucking ugly manipulation of somebody that is clearly under his control that it just makes you fucking hate Jack so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and we've seen him do this kind of stuff to Will too, right? Like we've seen him do it like over the course of the season, and like it shocked me from the beginning. And what's being put forth here for me is that like it used to be even worse, right? Like before he did some soul searching after one of his trainees literally died because of him, right? Like he's oh crap! We don't do we do that thing where we don't say stuff that happens in the later part of the episode?
No, it's okay. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk.
I feel like at this point, like it's pretty clear what's happened to Miriam. But yeah, but he's literally using like her admiration and maybe even like her crush on him to get her to do things that she really should not be doing. And like that's exactly what people mean when they talk about power differentials in relationships, right? Like this man literally has power over this woman due to their rank and stuff like that. But like, and also like this woman is supposed to be so smart and she's so dumb. Like, why are you so dumb? Like, can't you see that he's manipulating you? And I guess that's another thing. Like, you don't always see that you're being manipulated, which is going to be a topic of discussion later.
Yeah. I think that's what it comes down to, right? Is like just she's the desperation to be good at her job and to be acknowledged for being good at her job. And that even comes up in this scene. We didn't call it out, but Jack says like, are you getting frustrated? Like this job is frustrating. You're going to have to develop some thick skin. Like he's, I guess in the guise of trying to teach her how to be a better agent, he's, subjecting her to this. Excuse me. But at the same time, it's just straight up manipulation. Like it's exactly, you mentioned Will. There's no reason for Will to be going into potentially dangerous situations armed with a firearm, right? Like you think about everything that happened to Will in the first episode with Garrett Jacob Hobbs. There's no reason for that Will should be in that situation. But Jack put him there. Jack put him in front of all of these crimes, put him in front of all of this horror and this shock. And it's just, he just keeps playing with people. They're just pawns on this chessboard that this game that he's playing.
Again, like it comes back to this idea of like, look at us all like psychopaths, like working together. Like, how is what Jack is doing different from what Hannibal is doing? Like the means used to get to his ends, like they're no different, right?
Exactly. No, I agree, 100%. I mean, he hasn't given anybody mushrooms yet, but I mean, presumably he's done that in the past. So it's probably going to come up. I'm sure it's going to come up.
I'm very excited.
We have a very brief scene where Alana visits Gideon again and suggests that he could be being manipulated or being pushed and wants to help him find out. And he points out, like, oh, well, you doing that could be you pushing me. And we get the idea of, like, Gideon could be made to think that he's the Chesapeake Ripper, which is underlined in the scene following as Hannibal hosts both Chilton and Alana for dinner. And this is, like, you could tell this is what the stuff that Chilton loves. Like, he loves this, the fanciness of this dinner. He loves, like, the kind of highfalutin kind of society vibe where everybody is dressed up. They're into eating fancy food. We're all pretending to know how to pronounce all of the meals, like that kind of stuff. And just super, just aggravating. And also ingratiating. Like, he's trying to ingratiate himself in Hannibal, who you can clearly see, like, he has a huge respect for. And then, of course, Hannibal says he's serving tongue of a particularly chatty lamb. And
Well, so I'm very, very, again, like, the supercilious pig, like, is kind of something that has stuck in my mind. And, like, I think it potentially could have been Miriam. And so, like, who are we going to find out that this chatty lamb was? And if I can make, like, a bit of a bonkers prediction, given, like, the previous scene and whatnot, I think that it could potentially be somebody who worked at the psychiatric facility and had access to Dr. Gideon.
Okay, I'm down.
That's like my potential.
I don't actually
thoughts.
remember if we find out who the tongue is for. So
we might not, but there you go.
But I love making predictions, so let's continue
there
for
you
that. Hannibal says the classic line: "It's nice to have an old friend for dinner. You can think about it in two ways." And Alana says that there's three possibilities in this situation: that Gideon is the Ripper, that Gideon thinks he's the Ripper, or that Gideon knows that he's not. And Chilton points out, like, he thought that Gideon was the Ripper even before this attack. And Alana kind of questions him, saying, could you have implanted that idea? And Chilton says that psychic driving is unethical, and Hannibal says not always, which is very funny.
I actually love that, I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, I just love that no matter the situation, Hannibal is always going to be like, I think it really depends on context, right? Like, he did that, I think, in episode 3 or something, where he's like, if the thought is accepted by, like, more than one member of the tribe, then it's not crazy. Like, oh my God, Hannibal, please. And
I was curious if psychic driving was real, and I had never looked it up, and apparently it is a very real thing. Yeah, the Wikipedia is like you can go down on a rabbit hole on this, but it was definitely used in the 50s and 60s. Part of the MK Ultra program, which, like, the CIA eventually just admitted to. Like, you can go find all those papers, and it doesn't sound particularly great. So, like, the idea that Chilton could be psychically driving Gideon to believe that he is the Ripper is, again, like, exposing Chilton for what he is, like, just somebody that just seeks fame and importance and all of this stuff. And psychic driving, though not even once. They shouldn't do it. There's no context.
No, absolutely
Hannibal.
not. MK Ultra, part of the experiments happened, like, at McGill, at the Allen Memorial.
Oh yeah.
And the man who was like, doing those experiments on these very, very vulnerable people was the first chair of the psychiatry department at McGill. So
interesting,
fun stuff.
Donald Ewan Cameron is the name of the
Dr. Cameron.
I didn't know that. Yeah, like, that's straight from Wikipedia. So before people think that I'm smart, I'm literally just reading.
Well, I mean, I did. So I knew, because I was like, wait. Anyway, long story, but, like, in my very first year of my master's, obviously you have to talk about, like, research ethics, right? And that comes up because it's, like, the part of the dark history of McGill, right? And people don't like to talk about it at McGill. Some people were like, oh no, but that's just what's it called? A rumor. I'm like, no, it's not a rumor. Like, it's a thing. Like, it's a thing.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
It's a thing that
happened.
Yeah. Hannibal asks Chilton to help him with desserts, and they go into the kitchen, and Hannibal makes this great, like, kind of show of importance of these grapes that he has, that when you peel them, they have the same color of flesh as they do skin. And he specifically tells Chilton that he's much more forgiving of unorthodox behavior than Alana Bloom can be. And you can tell that Chilton is relatively surprised to get this information. He's like, wait, did he just say what I think he said? And it's the skin and the flesh thing, I think, is important in a way that I don't even know how to talk about. Like, I just feel like either there's some like subtle thing that a subtle reference that I'm not getting, or it's just Hannibal just having fun. And I can't tell which it is.
I mean, I think Hannibal's idea of fun is to say stuff that's meaningful that other people don't understand, right? Like that double meaning of everything. So I kind of took it as like, he likes when things are simple, and he kind of wishes that like he could be who he is in his full entirety, I guess. But he has to hide behind like a specific skin, a specific mask. So I don't know. That's how I took it. But I do think that he's just like fucking with Chilton also.
Yeah, at the same time, like, because Chilton is like, you could tell like he's like, from the moment you meet him, you can tell he's almost like has this like boorish behavior, right? Of pretending to this like upper class kind of echelon, whereas Hannibal just lives there, right? Like he's long since like understood and knows all of the stuff that Chilton is kind of playing to, and it's just he just feels like he's fucking with Chilton a little bit, which I get.
Oh, absolutely. Like he's definitely playing him like a fiddle, right? And I said that I already hate Dr. Chilton. Like I love the character, but I hate like men like him. But I really cannot help but feel sorry for him, because like he's no match for Hannibal, right? Like he is literally going to eat him alive. Like, you know, it's like taking candy from a baby at this point. Like it's basic manipulation textbook. Like, I'm not like other people. I understand. Like, you can say anything to me. Like, I would have done the same. Anyway, it's just like, poor Chilton. I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Oh no. You can't say much? Is that what it is?
So Jack gets another call.
Also, I want to talk about this huge ass piece of blue cheese in the background.
Oh yeah, I saw this note. I actually went back and like pulled the episode up because I was curious. It is a big hunk of blue cheese. Absolutely.
Oh my god, I love blue cheese. It's my favorite cheese. It's one of my favorite foods in the world. And like, I was just like, give me that blue cheese. Like, this is my Will Graham. Like.
So when I was a kid, I loved blue cheese dressing. And I've come to find out that's not like real blue cheese. It was just like a blue cheese dressing kind of, which I guess is just blue cheese covered in ranch, basically. Like I don't know what that jar was, but I loved it, and I love salads, and I loved eating it. And then one day I was like, you know what? I don't need a salad to eat this. I'll just get a spoon and eat this jar. And from that day forward, I hated blue cheese because I made myself kind of sick on it. And it's only in the last couple of years of Autumn getting like fresh blue cheese, like crumbles from the store to do salads and various things, that I've been like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. Like it's not traced in some unrecognizable mixture. It's just cheese. So excellent.
So I come from the place in France like Roquefort comes from.
Okay.
And like I went to visit like the caves and whatnot, and it's been like a lot of I don't know. I could talk about blue cheese forever and how to cook blue cheese and like how to use it and how to eat it. It's so good.
We need a blue cheese podcast. That's what we need. We need a cheese podcast. God,
yes, a cheese podcast. Yes.
Jack gets another call.
Sorry.
They trace it to an observatory. This is a pretty popular place in Vancouver, if I understand. But Beverly and Will arrive. Beverly says that they've been retracing Miriam's steps, but at some point she made a jump and says, you make those jumps. And Will again defends himself, saying the evidence is always there. Like, people treat his ability to be empathic as to be kind of spooky in nature, almost be kind of supernatural, and he's always very, very careful to be like, no, the evidence is there. I'm just putting the pieces together in a different way.
I do love that you used spooky, because having just transcribed the first 2 episodes, we did call those kinds of jumps like Mulder jumps in the second episode, and I'm like, yeah, that's his Mulder jumps, and it does make him feel a little spooky. I had to say that.
They meet up with Jack. And Jack calls the number. This time it wasn't like this time when he got the phone call, there was actually a number. So they call the number and they hear ringing from inside the observatory. And they rush in and they find an arm. a whole fucking arm holding a phone detached from the body, and beside it is a note that says, "What do you see?" That is implied by the drops to be written in blood, and the handwriting is notable. I guess we could say that.
Yes. I mean, it's clearly written also like with like ink, right? Like you can tell there's like ink stains and whatnot. And I was like, oh, who do we know who can like use all of these things? Like, it's not easy to write like with like
I very much thought this was blood. I thought this was like written, like turning blood into ink, basically. And that was what the drops were. I'll have to go back and see if it's red. I just kind of assumed it was blood, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah. I saw it as like a dark color, but I guess that makes sense. Dried blood.
Yeah. And presumably this is Miriam's arm, right? Like that's the guess that we are all, or that's the what we all are supposed to infer. Later, Jack and Hannibal talk. This is the last scene in this episode is pretty difficult because we realize some big things. Jack is frustrated because the Ripper is giving him something that he shouldn't have, which is this false hope. And Hannibal relates this to not having him lose hope for his wife, since she has already lost hope. And he tells Jack to take control. And I think it's such a good line, that take control line, going back to our theme of exposing Jack as not having control in this episode. And it's just like with Chilton, where he looked at Chilton and like subtly manipulated him. Not even suddenly, to be honest with you. Chilton's kind of an idiot in this regard, but like this is a much more subtle like insult, and because it's not such an insult as it is an observation. Hannibal is observing and telling Jack, like, I can see that you were losing control of your life and you should take control. And what he's also saying, without saying it, is that he is responsible for all of it. So it's such a good line. It's such a good moment because it just makes you like, Hannibal is such a horrible fucking person and I love him. Like, I can't help it.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like and honestly, when I first heard that line, like it felt really strange to me because, like, you know, as we know, like Hannibal clearly doesn't care about Jack, right? Like, but he is keeping him close, like just to kind of keep tabs on him because, as we find out, like he finds out that Jack is looking into like his pantry, to quote Jake Lionheart in our intro. But like in this moment, like. Where Jack is talking about his wife, like Hannibal's concern seems almost genuine. Like when he tells him to take control, there's something very like, I want you to want better for yourself. And I don't know if this is me projecting that onto Hannibal, but I don't know. Is it me projecting?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
I think it could definitely be both, right? Like I think both of the things that I just observed can be true. I've from the first episode, I kind of talked about Hannibal being an agent of chaos. And I think part of being that chaotic element is also allowing people to get better so that they can do wilder and wilder shit, right? So bringing Jack to the brink of losing control and then being there to help him gain it, right? To be that ally, that to be that person that Jack can lean on. Just gives him those good vibes, right? Like that's what Hannibal really, really wants, and like because he's going to go back to Hannibal so that Hannibal can slowly make him lose control again. Like it's all about that thing that you were talking about earlier of just slowly breaking people over time.
Pushing people to their limits, and like it feels like here he's like, come on, make this more interesting for me.
Yes,
like take control of the situation.
Exactly.
For a bit.
Yeah.
Try. You know.
Hannibal expresses sympathy for Jack's wife and the trainee, as I think as he calls her. And Jack again expresses like, I actually thought Miriam could possibly be alive. Like the Ripper got me to believe something that I knew was impossible. And you know, again, knowing that the Ripper is pretty much Hannibal, like this is real fucked up.
So fucked up.
And then
fucked up.
We get our last flashback, and this time it's not Jack's, it's Hannibal remembering Miriam. I love this so much. This is it's so good. It's so good.
I love how excited you just got about this.
Miriam. So we learn that Miriam arrives on Hannibal's doorstep 2 years ago, in the same office that they're currently occupying. And she's asking about one of the Ripper's victims, who was a patient of Hannibal's back when he was a surgeon. A little bit of lore, I think the established reason that he stopped being a surgeon is because, or the thing that he tells people is because, like, he let a patient die on the table once and it was too much for him. So he went to a different school of medicine. I think you could probably make an argument for, like, also for stuff like this because he was getting a little too close, right?
Yeah.
So
he girl bossed, he cannibaled a little too close to the sun.
Yes, he girl bossed too close to the sun. Very, very good. So she's been checking out all of the doctors that treated these patients, and of course the leap that she made here is that he's not a surgeon anymore. He was just on record for as the surgeon at the ER at the time this person was brought in, and Hannibal plays dumb, kind of thinking, like, saying like, oh, I have a very good memory, but I don't remember that, and then says like, oh, well, you know, she's like, you had a scar, and he's like, oh, well, I did take good notes, like I have journals, would you like to see that? And she's like, absolutely, that'd be super helpful.
When he says that, I'm like, no freaking way is he gonna let her see, like, his journals from that time. And I was like, why is he doing that?
And we see Hannibal climbing the ladder to his second story library. And as he does that, Miriam wanders around the office looking at his books, and then she notices the drawings, and then she sees the image of the wound man drawn in great detail, and realizes very quickly that all of these patterns fit the patterns of the wounds from the Chesapeake Ripper's kill that she's been investigating. And it's at this moment Hannibal, who has taken off his shoes so that he can be all sneaky, sneaks up behind her. Someone in the Discord said, like, when the socks come out, you know things are bad, which is just very funny.
That is really funny, actually.
He sneaks up behind her and begins to choke her, and then I don't think we know as an audience whether he kills her or whether she just passes out. And then I love coming back to the present where where Jack looks at him and just says she was a very brave young woman, and Hannibal just like takes a sip and just like enjoys this moment. It's so good. It's so horrible and bad.
It is so horrible. And it's so good. Like, it's the best kind of, like, really, really creepy chills, you know? Like, because it shows that he must have planned the whole thing, right? Like, at first I was like, oh my God, like, he thought on his feet. No. 100% he planned all of this. Like, oh my God. Like, the amount of Machiavellian, like, thought that had to go into this is kind of crazy to me, right? Like, so anyway,
yeah,
I'm like sweating thinking about it.
If you think about him saving the arm for later, like, that's fucking wild. That is a wild thing to do. Like, no matter how devious and horrible and evil you are, like, saving somebody's arm just to see, like, oh, I could get a use for this. Like, somebody saves a piece of tin in their backyard, something. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like, oh, this might be useful later. Like, I save HDMI cables. Like, oh, I might need this if I get a new thingy. Like, no, he's saving arms. He's got a thing of arms somewhere, of very specific arms to fuck with very specific people. It's very weird, Hannibal.
Well, like, how big are his freezers? Like, right? Essentially, is what this is about at this point. Like, how big are his freezers? Oh, God, like, how many freezers does he have? Like, I cannot how much electricity is he consuming every day?
I cannot wait till you see the answer to that, because it does come up later.
Oh, there's an answer. Oh my God, yes. Of course there's an answer to that. Of course this show would do that. But anyway, so if we come back to, like, this idea of exposing, like, getting to the core, putting forth, like, again, I'm going to reiterate something that I said earlier, but, like, we know that Hannibal is a bad dude. Like, we know that. But here we get to see, like, just how bad he is, because we get to see him be a bad dude, like, right in front of our eyes. And I felt, again, like, maybe that doesn't make sense, but to me it felt like a very different experience from, like, just knowing that he was a bad guy. Like, I really saw who Hannibal is in this moment. Like, this is what he does. This is the kind of work that he, like, has dedicated his life to, really. Like, he lures people in, like, very vulnerable people. He manipulates them into, like, a false sense of security, mind you. And then he harms them irreparably, like, right? Like, whether it's breaking them, whether it's, you know, killing them, whether it's eating them. Like, this is what we've seen him do with Will, with Jack, with Chilton, with Alana, and with Abigail as well. And so this whole thing with Miriam is probably why he got close to Jack in the first place, right?
Well, think about that. Like, if you extrapolate that, so we know 2 years ago, and we didn't specifically call this out, but when Miriam introduced herself, she says an FBI training, FBI trainee, and Hannibal says an FBI in training, FBI agent in training. So she kind of corrects her. So 2 years ago, he all of a sudden he realized like the FBI got kind of close. And I would love to know the timeline of him like meeting Alana Bloom and slowly making his name known to Jack Crawford. And I'll go back to that line that he told Abigail when Abigail told him she wanted to be an FBI agent. He said, I would love to know that you were there working to protect me. You're right. I mean, just like, because he does, he wants to know. And that's, one of the things that we know about serial killers is they love to ingratiate themselves into the process of catching, because they think they're so much smarter than the people chasing them. Except in this case, it's mostly true.
Yes. In this case, it's definitely true. I mean, it's true also for a lot of killers out there. Like, let's be real. Like, there are more murdered people out there than we have caught like responsible people for them. So there are a lot of people who do evade law enforcement because, like, for a lot of reasons, but in part because they've managed to stay hidden. Yeah,
exactly. And I guess just to underline this, like, finally realizing how evil Hannibal is and how long he's willing to wait and work, and realizing what the ramifications of that are for people that he's just met, like Will or like Abigail. Realizing, like, if he's willing to do this to Jack, who is the person in charge of trying to catch him, then what is he willing to do to Will for no other reason, just for fun? What is he willing to do to Chilton for no other reason but fun? He just plays with these people, and it's terrifying, and it's so good, so good.
It's so good.
I love this. I love this hateful man. I really do.
I do. Same. I love this hateful man. It's interesting because, like, this has also ignited some questions in me. Like, why do I love this show so much? Right? I'm like, do I really want to scratch at that? But yeah, because, like, why? Yeah, I don't know that I want to talk about this on the podcast. But yeah, it's definitely making me question a lot of things. Like, what about my enjoyment of the show? Like, why am I enjoying this? Because I've never really enjoyed horror before, right? But this I'm willing to listen to.
It's it's a good question, and I think like a little self-investigation is always good. I was looking up to see what the next episode was, and oh boy, okay, I cannot wait because I'm going to watch it tonight. So because Autumn was like, we get to watch Hannibal. You record with Mary, right? I don't even remember what point I was about to make. I'm so sorry. I think it's good to have a little bit of
self-reflection.
Yeah, self-reflection on that. For me, like, I've always enjoyed fantasy about murders and killing and gruesome deaths and horror and all of that stuff. And it's just like, for me, it's just it's fun up until the point that it's not. And I've definitely like if you get into the horror movie scene much, there's like slasher movies, and then there's like, this is the most brutal movie you've ever seen, and like there's a point where I'm like, okay, we're not doing this for like Freddy Krueger reasons anymore. Like, this is not fun. And I think part of the reason that Hannibal works for me is that he is basically a supervillain. He's so good. Like, he literally has a superpower in his sense of smell. Like, he's Wolverine at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's
yes.
But all of this, like, the knowledge that he has, the abilities that he has, the super sense of smell that he has, this like calm sense of being superior, it elevates into that supervillain status as opposed to shitty human being status. Even though he's a shitty human being, but like the fact that he's a supervillain puts it in this fantasy world where I can just enjoy it. So I'm happy to be here and see what he does. Now, that said, as much as I like Will, and Will is a precious, adorable little child in this, basically, you do feel bad. Like, you do feel feel bad for liking Hannibal so much, but he's a fictional character, and I don't care. I will like my fictional horror men. I don't.
For sure.
I want my murder husbands. I want them to be good.
Well, that's the thing, right? I want to be careful that I'm not like ascribing morality to liking a fictional character, because anyway, I think that's just not something that I like to do. But I think for me, just because of my relationship with fiction, like I always like to try to like use fiction as a way to like work stuff out that happens in my real life. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what is it about my real life that is making me like really enjoy this show? Yeah. Right. And so I'm thinking like about this idea of like manipulation and knowing when you're manipulated and like pushed to your limit, but also like, what are the things that you would do in certain circumstances that you wouldn't necessarily do in other circumstances? Right. So like maybe that's what I'm getting out of this show, like this quote unquote safe space to discuss those things. No, but you know, like
I'm laughing, but yeah, I get it.
Room for the unmentionable, right? I think Hannibal says something like that, like the unmentionables. I think maybe that's what this is.
I definitely think that we probably need to work that out off the podcast and then bring back our observations, our heavily edited observations later.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, yes.
There's one last thing that I wanted to bring up, and it's this picture of the Wound Man, because this is something that also comes up in the books and everything, and I just think this is a cool thing. It's literally a picture of a human body with all of these various wounds. It's been around since like the 1400s, and it's just like it's a picture of a body with the wounds, and like on the side it's how to fix all of the wounds. Like it's supposed to be like a medical text, right? And it's survived over the years, and it's like there's like different adaptations, different drawings of it, and all this other stuff. So like Hannibal recreating the Wound Man both on paper and in person, I think is really, really crazy. And it's just really like, it's just so Hannibal, right? Like to take this like illustration and to bring it to life. And also on the two things that I fact checked this week, which was psychic driving and the Wound Man, if you go on the Wikipedia, like 3 sentences in, they both mention the TV show Hannibal. Like it's immediately like, it's like, oh, but Hannibal brought it back. And it's just that's just a very funny thing for me. So
I love that Wikipedia is so good at like acknowledging where their traffic comes from.
Right? It's so good.
It's like, oh, Hannibal fans are here. Let's acknowledge them.
Do you have any last thoughts before we go to our reviews?
No, I think I've already shared too much.
Got a little too close to the sun. We girl bossed a little too close.
Yep.
That's it. Let's hit our reviews. Mary, what's your review this week?
I would like to give this episode 4 stars because the meaty and slightly bloody entree that we were served satisfied my appetite for answers while leaving enough room for somber curiosity about what's still to come.
I'm also going to give it 4 stars. It was a bold course with hidden flavors revealed over time, served with meat so rare you could swear you can taste the blood. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for communicating with us on various social medias. Thank you for commenting or leaving reviews. I actually haven't checked the Apple reviews. I need to go do that. But thank you for doing that, and specifically for sharing the podcast with your friends. That's the only way the podcast really can grow, and we very much appreciate you doing so. Barry, where can you be found on the internet?
I can be found at Mary Turner _ on Twitter, and I can also be found at carryingwayward.com if you're interested in supernatural podcasts.
Which of course you are, because you're listening to 2 people who host a supernatural podcast. So, if for some reason,
which you should be very interested in.
If for some reason you've listened to Monster of the Week and not Carrying Wayward, you should definitely go check that out. It's a very, very good podcast. I listen to it every week.
Thank you so much.
I can be found on Twitter at JG Greer. You can also find all of my other podcasts at creepybutnecessary.cool if you're into Supernatural, Merlin, or The X-Files. And also, Chris, this is out way after this, so this would be a good time. Chris and I over at Mouse of the Week are doing a Game of Thrones podcast now for our patrons. So if you want to sign up for the low price of $1 a month, you can go do that. Go find us at creepybutnecessary.cool for all of those details. And if you want to hear me chat Game of Thrones, somehow more awkward than talking about Hannibal. Like,
honestly, it's so worth it. Like for $1 a month, like please, everybody, go sign up for that Patreon. It's so good.
The amount of times that characters are literally just having sex and then talking about what's happening in the world of Game of Thrones is just too much for me. It's too much for my weekly brain. Again,
I listened to the first episode, by the way, and I have so many thoughts.
Oh, good, excellent,
yes,
excellent. I'm excited.
Amazing first episode.
I am thankful for everybody listening here. We'll be back in a couple of more weeks for more Hannibal. Including that episode, everybody. We're getting there, so I'm excited.
No.
Until then, bon appetit.
Bon appetit, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, my bike is way away. Hold on.
I was like, you're so
Good morning.
far. So much better.
I'm writing my review real quick.
Oh yeah, the review.
Because I completely forgot.
Listen, it's fine.
After the week that we've had.
I feel like this has been a tough week.
It's been an adventurous week, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You've been on a roller coaster, I swear.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like the astrology or what, but like, or maybe some karma in refusing the horse, but like, I just, yeah, like somebody drove into my parked car.
While you were in it. That's the thing that,
while I was
I don't know why that detail matters the most to me, but when you were telling me this, I didn't understand that at first. And I was like, yeah, but that's so much scarier because I'm sure you were just sitting there like vibing out and all of a sudden crash. Like that's so scary.
Yeah. Just like, and luckily, like the person was just like backing out of a parking spot, right? So they weren't going very fast, but like it was just like, why is my car suddenly screeching and moving? Like, what is going on?
So bad. They're gonna fix it though, right? Like they're not gonna have to like replace the car or anything like crazy like that.
No. It's honestly just like cosmetic, to be honest. Luckily, but I don't want to let it slide because like I am absolutely 0% responsible, and this is agreed by the insurance, who had to conduct an investigation.
Of course they did.
I was like, how are you going to investigate something that happened like in an open air parking lot with like no cameras or nothing?
There's a level of dumbassery that I feel like we have to go through nowadays because like lawyers just got good at their jobs over the years. So like now we just all have to like perform things just to like make sure we put it down on a piece of paper somewhere so that somebody else can be like, oh no, we did an investigation on this parked car. Like, exactly. It's so stupid, and I get so annoyed by it. I deal with a lot of
this woman.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No. Go ahead. You deal with a lot of
engineering documents, and so like, without getting into, I guess, a lot of details, like we do these like bids for the thing that I sell to like towns or public utilities or whatever. And just recently, like this small town, like in rural Louisiana, that's got like a population of like maybe 1,400 people. They're doing this project, and like it should just be like a open shut case, like done. This engineer released a 300-page engineering document about it, and it just makes me want to scream. Like, because I'm the guy that has to read through all 300 pages to make sure that all that shit's correct. So like, it took a long time to make sure that they weren't trying to be sneaky about something. But yeah, it's so ridiculous that like, it's just lawyers and engineers. That's what I get mad at. And accountants. I get mad at everybody now that I'm thinking about it.
You're like, all of the professionals. They can just go fuck themselves.
Absolutely. So did this woman just like wasn't not paying attention on her phone, or?
No, she wasn't paying attention. Like, to be honest, she was kind of like badly parked, and I would have usually never parked next to somebody parked like that just because I'm like, she's going to hit my car for sure when she gets out. But I didn't have a choice. There was like very little room left in the parking lot. And so like I made sure to park myself like as conveniently for her as I possibly could within those circumstances, right?
And still,
because I was like, and yet, when she got out, I think she was looking back because she didn't realize. Like, I looked up early enough to see that she was looking back, not in front, and she just didn't understand what happened, like why her car wasn't backing up anymore. She's like, what's going on?
wow.
I'm like, oh my God, it's my car. You hit my car. That's what's going on.
I drive a lot for my job,
Mm-hmm.
and it's remarkable how much worse like driving has gotten. And I know that's like a very boomer thing to say of like these young kids or whatever, but it's not just young kids. Like, I've gotten to the habit of just like passing people, and if I look over and they're looking at their phone, I just honk, and like it scares the shit out of them because they realize like, oh, I haven't been paying attention. And it's just a very funny thing and a very mean thing that I do. But also, like, pay attention. You're on a road. You're traveling 70 miles an hour in a 2-ton vehicle flying down the road. Like, please pay attention.
Is it mean though, or is it warranted?
It's probably it would probably be counted as aggressive driving. Like, I think if you took a defensive driving class, like they'd be like, you don't do that. Autumn used to
but sometimes people need to be told like to stop fucking around, right? And I feel like that's, I don't know.
Autumn's real big on revenge. When we lived in Phoenix,
I love her so much. You don't need to sell her more to me.
she's very much like you. If you harm me once, like, you're cut off forever. Like, she does not forgive a grudge. Like, there are people that I have forgiven that have done things to me where she's like, I don't know, they were mean to my friend Jerry. they can fuck off, and I'm like, okay, like, it's my father. Like, you can't. he did it to me when I was like 13. It's okay. Like, we all forgive each other now. But she used to the interstates were so busy in Phoenix that they had like metered on ramps. So like it'd be 2 lanes going to the interstate, and they would, it'd be a red light and they would flash a green, 2 cars would go, and that kind of thing. People would like go on the shoulder to like pass people, and if they did that to Autumn would just follow them for miles, just laying on the horn, just one solid like. And I was finally like, I was like, Autumn, like, we are going to get shot. Like, Phoenix is not a safe town to do this in. Like, people carry guns. Like, this is basically like cowboy land. We should not be doing this. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that's always my fear whenever I'm in the States, which doesn't happen often anymore. But like, I'm like, I don't feel safe standing up for myself because I'm like, I don't know if this person has a gun or not, and like what kind of relationship they have with their guns that they may or may not have, right? So it's like, I just don't. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, just like whatever, it's fine.
I told you my coworker got a gun pulled on him recently. He was looking at a water meter, and this lady came out with a shotgun on her porch, and like the police were called, and like SWAT team arrived, and the whole nine. It's so funny because we're so gun crazy down here that like, we have open carry now, like without anything. Like, you don't even have to have a license. Like, I don't even know how old you have to be anymore. Like, I think you can just have a gun on you at all times at this point. But like, someone pulls a shotgun and all of a sudden like the police arrive and it's a bad thing. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, which way are we going? Like, is she allowed to have the shotgun and wave it around her house and carry it to the Starbucks or not? Like, what are we doing? So yeah.
No. I mean, I think those are very, very good questions. I always feel a little uncomfortable just because I'm not American, right? And so I don't feel super comfortable weighing in on like especially like domestic American stuff. Like, it, I have my own thoughts about it, and I'm very happy that in Canada you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. Like, that's but yeah, I agree that there seems to be like a really big contradiction there of like, well, isn't she allowed to stand her ground, right?
Exactly.
Like, anyway, I don't get it.
And it's just annoying. Gun culture in a lot of ways it's really, really
strange.
Gross. Yeah, it's also very, very strange. Like, it's just the same thing as truck culture. Like, people who put truck nuts on their truck, right? Like, and as a guy that is about to buy a new truck, like, I am fully aware of how hypocritical I am. Like, but we need it to pull horses places, okay? Like, the horses have to travel. So,
but there you go. It's a work truck.
It is a work
truck. It makes sense.
It is very much a work truck. I like I saw a video once of them just counting trucks going underneath a bridge on the interstate of just how empty the beds were. Just like, why are you guys driving this? And it just, just don't need those kind of vehicles anymore.
Well, it's become the thing is like, the second that something becomes a status symbol, it's a status symbol.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like,
and so it becomes like this symbol of like masculinity and hard work and this and that, like all of those like values that are very strongly valued by a certain demographic in the US and in Canada as well, right? But like it's like very it means something to drive a big truck.
I have so I drive a Camry, and like I'll pull up at a job site, and I can see like dudes like, why is this dude driving a car or whatever? Like I see that look from people, and I'm like, I drove to the same job site you did, homie. Like we're walking on the same dirt. Like I don't need a 4x4 that's like lifted 18 inches in the air to get to the water meter that's at the edge of the street. Like what are we doing? Like I do 40 gallons on the interstate, 40 gallons a mile on the interstate. Like what do you do? 40 miles per gallon, 40 gallons per mile would be what they do. So.
And that's the thing, right? Like here, what I see a lot, like in my environment, I see a lot of like suburban moms like driving SUVs.
Yes.
And I'm like, listen, like I get that you want like more room, more this, more that. Like it makes sense, right? Like I specifically bought a bigger car when my son turned, I think like 7 or 8, because I was like, we just need more room, right? Like I was driving a really small car before, like a compact car. And I was like, okay, like we need something that makes a little bit more sense for what we're doing. So I understand the need to like upgrade, but at the same time, I'm like, you don't need an SUV to drive on the road, to drive your kids to school, to go get groceries. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. Plus, you end up in all of those situations where your car is too big for like the places that you want to go. Like the school parking lot, which is where this happened, like the spots are teeny tiny, and all of these people are driving like very large luxury SUVs that they never take off of like paved roads. And I'm like, again,
why?
Status symbol.
Yeah,
it shows that you have money. It shows who you are, right? Like,
have you seen the like the increasing, or I guess the decreasing distance from those things too? Like, I guess I'm phrasing this all wrong, but there's like a measurement of like how far away you can see a child in front of you. And because these things are so jacked up, and like the hoods, and like they're becoming more aggressive looking, like a child will disappear like 6 feet in front of a vehicle. I think you literally just can't see the child from your windshield, which is crazy. The status symbol thing, like showing people that you have money. This isn't a new thing by any means. For some reason, like over the last several weeks, it's just been bugging me. Just realizing like how many people that I talk to or that I know that are like just drowning in debt, right? Like just mortgages and car notes and all this stuff. And Autumn and I like we have a car note now. And we're about to have a truck note, but like before last year, like we didn't have anything. Like we just had a house note. Like we don't carry credit card. Like we just don't carry debt around. And realizing like talking to some friends and being like, oh, you guys owe a lot of money. Okay. All right. So that's how you have all of these toys. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're not just rich. Like I just thought that you guys had a lot of money, but no.
One thing I really realized is that I was looking around at some of my friends. I'm like, how are you guys affording all of this? And the answer was simple. It was debt.
It was credit cards, right?
It was credit cards, like the worst kind of debt that you can possibly have. And again, this is not a moral judgment on the people doing this, right? Like, but it's so scary to me. Like I have carried some credit card debt for some time, and I vowed to never do that again, right? And I'm a student. I carry student debt at this point. But like I will stop my studies before I start carrying credit card debt again. Like never, ever again.
One of the most anxious times of my life, I was very bad with money in my early 20s. And I had a job where I was making an okay amount of money, but I was very, very bad at managing it. So like I was often broke, right?
Same, actually. I was like making all this money. And I never had money.
I don't know about the school systems up there, but like they never taught us how to balance a checkbook. No, like I just didn't know. And not that that's any excuse. Like you shouldn't blah, 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 blah. But anyway, early 20s. But one of the most anxious time in my life is I went to a payday lender. I don't know if they're like everywhere down here. So I don't know if they have them in Canada. Basically, you're like, you go to them and you show them your paycheck, and they front you cash plus interest for you to like bring your paycheck to them the next time. And I needed to do it to pay rent or to pay a bill or to get my electricity turned on or something. I had to, like, it was one of those, like, I need money and I don't want to ask my friends or my parents for money, or I couldn't or whatever. And the delay in like getting that cash first and then getting my paycheck and then having it like just gone plus like tons of extra money for interest or whatever was like the worst feeling. Like I grew up relatively, I don't want to say poor, even though like I make fun of Autumn because like I'll be like, you know, you were rich, you had Nickelodeon or whatever, but So it wasn't like my mom did the best for us, but I didn't grow up like wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. And that was like the poorest I ever felt of just it just made me feel bad, right? Like, not that you should feel bad for being poor, but like, it's just one of those things of like, it just made me feel like and I was kind of like you, I vowed never to do it again. I was like, okay, I'm going to pay my bills on time, even if I waste a bunch of money at the club. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, maybe I should, pay rent before going to the club.
Right? Maybe I should pay the electric bill so I have something to come home from the club to.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, I don't know. I think that a lot of us have gone through like that period of time where it's like, oh, shoot, I do not know how to manage money. And then you fall on hard times and, oh my gosh, like, okay, so I need to make changes to the way that I spend my money.
Yeah. And then like, I have family that, bought their 16-year-old like a $40,000 vehicle.
Oh, wow.
And like, good for you, I guess. But like, he wrecked it almost immediately because it was essentially a toy to him, right? Like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't anything valuable to him because you just handed it to him. And I'm not, that is me getting kind of judgy because I know the people, but at the same time, like, I just look at it, I'm like, how could you afford that? And then all this other stuff, and then all this other stuff, like, it's just crazy to me. Like, I just don't know. And oftentimes it's just like credit card debt, or like, oh, you have 2 mortgages on your house, so that's where you get all the extra money or whatever. And I'll never forget when I told my boss when I moved back to Louisiana, I was like, hey, I bought a house. And he goes, no, you didn't. He goes, you have a piece of paper that says you will own a house one day. And I was like, you know what? You're really taking the joy out of this, my friend.
The bank bought a house that they let you live in.
Yeah.
So long as you make monthly payments to them.
Yeah. You're renting to own, essentially.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. The bank owns your house.
Yeah. You own a piece of paper that says you will eventually own a house one day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's the thing. Like, I think it's always important to remember these things, right? Like, just because, and now, especially like all of these, you can buy anything on like monthly plans, right? Like it's so much easier now to do that. And I'm so scared of doing that because I know that with my impulse control issues, like, oh yeah, it's just like $20 a month for like 6 months. I can definitely buy that. Oh, I can definitely buy that too. Oh my God. And then all of a sudden you owe like $250 every month for the things that you already have in your house.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
And then you realize, like, I mean, I think
you don't actually need that thing.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is just realizing how much of this stuff is just, this thing will make me happy, and then like you get it, and like it absolutely did not change your life. One of the first times I got on TikTok, and I think one of the reasons I like TikTok, or I kept watching it, was there was a video about like some fantastical vacation somewhere, right? Like, and it was one of those like, we're slowly walking over the bridge in a rainy forest, and like, this is a 2-bedroom, blah, 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 blah. It was one of those like vacation videos, and then someone broke in and it's like, you're going to take your mental problems there too. You can't. Like, yeah, you're going to be mentally unwell at the nice spot. Like, don't think it's going to fix you. Like, you're just going to carry all that baggage with you. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this is funny.
Right. Well, that's also, I mean, this is also like a commentary on, on the capitalist system, but like, stuff doesn't make you happy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and of course, like, some things will bring you some joy, right? Like, I'm not like, I got my dad bought me a Garmin watch this week. That was like one of the highlights of my week. And I love that thing so much. But it's also like, I lived very well without it. Yeah. Like, I did not need it. I'm very happy to have it, but I didn't need it, and I probably would never have bought that for myself with my money, right?
Well, that's that always makes the best gifts, right? As something that you would never buy for yourself, I think, or something obviously very thoughtful, but also like on the expensive end, like, it's not just like, here's this luxury item; it's here's this luxury item that somebody realized that you would never buy for yourself, that you're happy with.
Exactly. There you go.
It'll be a while, but I hope the luxury purse I bought on for her birthday, I hope she likes it, because it was very nice, and I'm hoping, and it's in like 2 weeks. She won't hear this for like months, so I'm not too stressed.
Yeah, for a while.
But, yeah.
I'm sure she will. Plus, a purse, like, that's something that you keep, right? Like, that you can keep for quite some time. So, like, I don't know. I like those gifts that like stay with you for a while too. And that's the thing. Like, I've also changed like the way that I consume or buy stuff, where I'm like, how long is this going to last me? Like, what is my return on investment here?
That's the right. Like, and I think that's something that I'm gonna send you a picture of the purse just because I like the purse a lot.
Oh yes, please.
Um,
Oh my god, I love it. Oh, that's very cool.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's very classy and cool. That's
is.
the other thing is like trying to figure out what's the stuff that's going to last, right? Like what's the stuff that's going to be useful to your life for a long period of time, and not just like a trinket. And I'm real bad about buying trinkets. You saw I bought like a medieval synth this week. Like I'm real bad sometimes. And I'm like the learning curve on this thing is impossible, right? Like I've never used anything like it, so I'm literally watching YouTube videos for a minute, pausing it, and then trying to replicate what they did on the video. Like it's going to take a while, but like I'm, making myself like actually use the thing and not just be like, oh, it's too hard. Like this was a cute thing and I bought it. Like I tried to make myself actually use it. That could be tough sometimes of just trying to figure out what it's going to mean to you. I think so.
Oh, for sure. Especially if you don't have it in your hands, right? Because sometimes it's just like the longing for something more, right?
Yeah.
Like that desire for that one thing that's going to, like you were saying with the vacation, for that one thing that's going to fix you, right?
Exactly, right?
And I feel that very, very much for like planners and stuff like that. Because I'm always looking for ways to like organize myself. But the thing is, I get bored of the ways that I pick to organize myself for a bit. So like I have to have various rotating planners.
Of course.
Right.
At least planners are relatively inexpensive. Like if you get to the synth hobby, man, those things are it's crazy.
Oh man. Yeah.
I own two.
I have a knitting hobby, don't worry.
Oh, is knitting expensive? Like I don't know anything.
Yes.
Is it like the yarn the price, or are you buying like gold-plated knitting needles or whatever?
No, it's the yarn. The yarn, especially if you start like getting into like the natural yarns, like it can get very expensive very quickly.
Interesting. You don't have like a Garmin needle or anything that keeps up with your calories per knit or anything.
Unfortunately. No, as I'm knitting, my Garmin is like, move! Like, it's such a bully. Oh my God. It's like today, I just ran a 5K. I did my second best like PR for a 5K.
Hell yeah.
Right? Like I've been running since March, and that fucking thing had the gall to tell me that my VO2 max was poor. And I'm like, no, screw you.
Screw you. Condescending little piece of technology that I will throw in a glass of water immediately. Like
it's waterproof. God damn it. I can swim with it.
I throw you in the ocean then. You bet you're not waterproof in the ocean once you get to a certain depth. Yeah, I had an Apple Watch for all. I don't like wearing watches in general, but Autumn gave me an Apple Watch for some holiday birthday thing. And so I made a real effort to like get into it, and like I really like the reminder to stand up, because as a guy who plays video games, like I can definitely veg on the couch for way too long at once. But then it was like closing those damn loops and like all of the gamification of everything just like irritated the shit out of me, and like I just every day I would look at my wrist and get aggravated more than anything. So
I mean, I guess it's better that I got really addicted to it, like the closing of the rings and the calories and the whatnot. Like I just have that kind of personality, and at one point I had to take it off. I had to take off the watch, and I sold it because I had an Apple Watch for a bit, and I had to sell it because I was like, this is actually very detrimental to my mental health at this point. And so I like that about the Garmin, that it doesn't do that. Like it doesn't gamify like calories and this and that. It shows you data on it, but you can hide it if you want to. And it doesn't like have that like closing of the loops thing that can get me really, really riled up in the long run. So yeah, that's cool too.
Jesus Christ, I just got so scared.
What?
We have cameras around the house, and they're run to Autumn's extra monitor in our office. So when her laptop's off, it just shows all of the camera feeds. And there's one that's like the one that's big on the screen, like a wasp just walked by it. And so it just looked like a 20-foot wasp on the screen. So and just out of the corner of my eye, I saw this gigantic, like obviously like realized what was going on very quickly, but yeah, that was terrifying.
Yeah,
just
fast enough. Oh my God, yeah.
You want to talk about some Hannibal?
I do want to talk about some Hannibal.
I want to get your opinion on this episode so bad.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
I forgot to hit record.
That's okay. I just automatically start recording everything. So
I know. That was probably the way to go. I have so many thoughts about this episode.
Oh man, like I watched it again the other day, and it was just like,
Yeah.
There's so much to say, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I remember watching it the first time, and I just like, I think that for a good half of the episode, like my jaw was just on the floor. I just couldn't pick it off the floor. I was just like, what is happening?
The second season, the first season is going to be a lot. The second season, I think, is going to be it may be overpowering. Like, you may be like, I need to have a months-long break before in between episodes, or I expect that, or the exact opposite, where you're like, okay, let's record again day after tomorrow. Let's record again day after tomorrow. Like, I need to watch all of this series. Like, let's do it now. Like, we're gonna have all of season 2 booked before season 1 even finishes, like, being published. So
that's actually very possible. Well, I mean, the good thing is that if I need a break, we do have like so many episodes to buffer
so many
now.
episodes. Yeah, I haven't actually looked, but we've got.
I think I had calculated, and we're at this point good until like early October or something.
Yeah, so episode 5 comes out September 29th. As we're recording this, it is not even September. We're a week away from September. So yeah, we're a solid month and a half ahead. Well, I guess we're recording this, so we're almost 2 months ahead then. So
yeah. It gives us buffer also to think of some specials.
I know.
Wink, wink, wink.
I'm excited.
Listeners?
I want to ask people what our first special should be. I think I know. I think it's just going to be Silence of the Lambs, but I think that's the obvious thing. But let's get into it. Let's go.
Yep. Let's go. Are your dogs okay, by the way?
Is it coming through? I'm so sorry. I'm in the.
I mean, don't be sorry, but I'm like, are they okay? Like, do they need a hug?
No. We have Penny. Poor idiotic Penny. She has 3 brain cells.
Aww.
One is scream, one is eat, one is bathroom. And when I'm not in there, or if Autumn's not in there, Autumn's riding her horse, and I'm in the back, and I think she can probably hear me talking. So she's like, but I'm not getting attention. So and I keep thinking she's just going to go to sleep. Let me take a quick break.
Yeah, for sure. Take a moment. I mean, I don't mind. I'm just like concerned for poor Penny.
she's fine. I promise you. This is the reason why we adopted her, is because she was given up because some lady in New Orleans had an apartment and couldn't leave her alone without the dog barking a lot.
Oh, poor baby.
And she's better here with like a dog friend, and we're usually around or whatever. But some days,
but she's just not having a good time.
Some days she just seizes on the screen brain cell and she just doesn't let it go. So I'll be right back.
Yep. Maybe I should find something to read to do like a. Well, I don't want to steal like Chris's thing, but like maybe I should find something to read. That could be interesting to put in the outtakes. Listeners, what would you like me to read? Tell me. What do I have on hand? I have Feminist Bioethics at the Center on the Margins, edited by Dr. Scully, PhD. Isn't that amazing? All right. What do we have here? Nobody wants to hear about this.
I'm back.
Is she better?
Well, I gave her a treat and put her in a crate, so she's.
Oh, okay. Oh, so now the brain cell that's eat is busy.
Yes, exactly. You just got to distract.
And she's like, if I bark more, I'm gonna get more treats.
That's exactly what I think we have trained her to do. Unfortunately, it's not been good. Yeah. She just gets excited. She only knows how to scream her emotions. So
yeah. I mean, that's okay. That's okay. I get it. Okay. Well, I'm glad that she's good.